The Unseen Challenger. The Galactic Tournament was the most dangerous and most watched event in the universe. Warriors from different planets came to fight for glory, power, and the grand prize, a high-ranking alien princess, Lady Vishera. The rules were simple. Win, and you get everything. Lose, and you don't leave alive. Aliens of all kinds filled the massive arena. The crowd cheered for the fighters, placing bets on who would survive. Every warrior was deadly, trained for years in battle. And then, there was Daniel Carter. He was not a warrior. He was just a human tourist who had come to watch the event. He sat among the audience, eating some strange alien food and enjoying the show. To the aliens, humans were weak. No human had ever entered the tournament. They were not considered warriors. But fate had a different plan. A mistake that changed everything. Daniel was enjoying the tournament when a large alien, covered in blue armor and scars, walked up to him. "You are the last name on the list. Get ready for battle," the alien grunted. Daniel blinked. "What? I'm not a fighter. There's been a mistake." The alien ignored him and pushed him forward. Before Daniel could protest, giant metal gates closed behind him. The crowd roared. The announcer's voice echoed in the arena. And now, the final unknown challenger, a human. The laughter was loud. The warriors smirked. To them, this was a joke. Daniel looked around. The only way out was through the fight. He sighed. Well, this is bad. The first fight. Daniel's opponent was a six-armed reptilian giant, twice his size. The alien flexed its claws, ready to tear him apart. The bell rang. The fight had begun. The alien rushed toward Daniel, claws slashing through the air. Daniel dodged, just barely. His heart pounded. This wasn't a simple street fight. If he made one mistake, he was dead. The alien attacked again, but Daniel was faster. His human instincts kicked in. He moved, sidestepped, and avoided the deadly strikes. The audience gasped. The other fighters frowned. This human was still alive. Daniel knew he couldn't match the alien's strength, but he didn't need strength. He needed skill. He studied his opponent. The alien relied on brute force. It was fast but predictable. Daniel took a deep breath. Then he moved. The turning point. Instead of running away, Daniel charged forward. The alien swung its claws, expecting an easy kill. But Daniel ducked, rolled, and suddenly landed a perfect punch, right at the alien's weak spot. The crowd went silent. The alien staggered back, eyes wide. Daniel didn't stop. He moved again, delivering a precise strike to the alien's ribs. With a final kick to the head, the alien collapsed. The arena fell into absolute silence. Then the announcer spoke. Unbelievable. The human wins? The crowd erupted into chaos. Some aliens were furious. Some were shocked. Others, for the first time, looked at Daniel with respect. Lady Vishera, seated on a golden throne high above the arena, narrowed her eyes. She had seen thousands of warriors fight, but this human was different. Daniel took a deep breath. He had survived the first round, but he knew this was just the beginning. Cliffhanger. A new target. Behind the scenes, powerful figures whispered, "This human is a problem. He must not win again." Daniel had no idea, but the entire galaxy was now watching him. And some wanted him dead. The warrior within. The arena was still buzzing with shock. Daniel Carter, a human tourist, had just defeated a six-armed reptilian warrior in the first round of the Galactic Tournament. No one could believe it. Humans were not warriors. Humans were not even considered a threat. And yet Daniel had stood against a seasoned killer and won. Some aliens whispered that it was luck. Others watched him carefully, wondering if there was something more to this strange human. But not everyone was impressed. High above the arena, in the royal observation chamber, Lady Vishera sat on her golden throne, her piercing violet eyes locked onto the human below. She had seen warriors of all kinds, from cybernetic gladiators to beast-like mutants, but she had never seen a human fight like that. "Interesting," she murmured. Beside her, an alien general scoffed. "It was a fluke. He won't survive the next round." Lady Vishera said nothing, but deep inside, she was curious. Who was this man? Daniel's realization. Back in the waiting chambers, Daniel leaned against the cold metal wall, catching his breath. His heart was still racing. His hands ached from the fight. His body screamed at him, reminding him that he was not a warrior. He was just a traveler, a normal guy who had somehow been dragged into a deadly tournament. But as he thought about it, was that really true? He had reacted fast. He had read his opponent's moves. He had found a weakness and struck at the perfect moment. That wasn't just luck. Somewhere deep inside, he knew how to fight, a past he had tried to forget. Daniel closed his eyes, memories flashing before him. Years ago, he had trained in a forgotten martial art, passed down by an old master. Not for tournaments, not for sport, but for survival. His mentor had once told him, "Strength isn't about power, it's about knowing how to use what you have." Daniel had never expected to use those lessons in a fight for his life against aliens. But here he was. And he wasn't done yet. The second fight, a deadlier opponent. A loud alarm rang through the arena. The next round was about to begin. Daniel was shoved forward once again, the massive metal doors locking behind him. This time, his opponent was even more dangerous. A hulking cybernetic warrior with blades for arms stepped into the arena. The crowd cheered, expecting a brutal execution. "Human," the warrior growled. "I will end this quickly." Daniel took a deep breath. He had no weapons, no armor, just his instincts. The bell rang. The warrior lunged. Blades sliced through the air, missing Daniel by inches. He ducked, rolled, barely escaping death. The warrior was fast. Too fast. Daniel couldn't afford to make a single mistake. A desperate gamble. Daniel focused. He studied the warrior's movements. Every attack had a pattern. Slash left. Slash right. Heavy strike down. He watched. He waited. And then, when the warrior lifted his blade for a powerful downward strike, Daniel moved. He sidestepped at the last second, dodging by a hair. The warrior's blade slammed into the ground, stuck for just a second. A second was all Daniel needed. He jumped onto the warrior's arm, using its own strength against it. He climbed up, twisting midair, and slammed his elbow into the back of the warrior's head. The warrior stumbled, circuits sparking. The audience gasped. How was the human still alive? The warrior roared, furious now. But Daniel was already moving again. With one final, well-placed kick, he sent the warrior crashing into the ground. Silence. Then, the announcer's voice boomed across the arena. "The human wins again." The crowd erupted in chaos. This wasn't luck anymore. This human was dangerous. A target on his back. Behind the scenes, in the dark corridors of the arena, powerful figures gathered. A cloaked alien spoke in a low, angry voice. "This human is making fools of us all. He must not win again." Another alien nodded. The next fight will be his last. In the arena, Daniel had no idea that he had just made powerful enemies, and they were ready to do anything to stop him. The unbreakable human. The air in the arena was thick with tension. Daniel Carter had just done the impossible, won twice in the Galactic Tournament. A human, a mere spectator, had defeated two powerful alien warriors, one with 6 arms, the other a cybernetic killer with blades for limbs. The audience didn't know whether to cheer or be terrified. But in the shadows, powerful figures whispered, "This human is a problem." One growled, "If he wins again, he will embarrass us all." Another voice hissed, "Then we make sure he doesn't win." In that moment, Daniel Carter became a target. Daniel feels the pressure. Back in the waiting chamber, Daniel sat on the cold metal floor, sweat dripping down his face. His muscles ached, his body screamed for rest. He hadn't trained for this. He had no armor, no weapons, no superpowers. And yet, he was still standing. "You okay?" Daniel looked up. It was Kara, a half-cybernetic warrior from a distant planet. She was one of the few who hadn't laughed at him when he first entered. "You fight like someone who doesn't want to die," she said, sitting beside him. Daniel smirked. "Yeah, well, that's pretty accurate." She studied him. "You're not like the others. You don't fight for glory. You fight because you have to." Daniel shrugged. "I wasn't even supposed to be here." Kara nodded. "Then survive. Because after 2 wins, the people in charge. They don't want you to win again." Daniel tensed. "What do you mean?" Kara glanced around, then lowered her voice. "The tournament is not just for entertainment. It's a way to control power. Only those chosen by the High Lords are allowed to win. You were not chosen." Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. "If you step into that arena again," Kara warned, "they won't fight fair. A fight rigged for death." The alarm blared. It was time for the next round. Daniel took a deep breath, stretching his sore muscles. He had no choice. He had to fight. The massive doors slid open, and Daniel stepped into the arena once again. The crowd was louder this time. Some cheered for him. Others booed. But what made his stomach twist was the opponent waiting for him. This time, there was no single opponent. There were 3. Daniel's blood ran cold. He turned toward the announcer's booth, where the High Lord sat. The alien announcer grinned. "A special challenge. Since the human is so strong, let's see if he can handle 3 warriors at once." The crowd roared. Daniel clenched his fists. They were trying to kill him. His opponents were brutal-looking. One was a massive rhino-like alien, nearly twice his size. The second was a quick insectoid fighter with razor-sharp arms. The third was a mind reader, its glowing eyes locked onto Daniel. This wasn't a fight. It was an execution, a battle against impossible odds. The bell rang. The 3 aliens attacked at once. Daniel rolled aside, barely dodging a bone-crushing stomp from the rhino alien. The insectoid warrior lashed out, its blade-like arms slicing toward him. Daniel twisted, avoiding the first strike, but the second cut across his arm. Pain burned through his skin. He gritted his teeth. He couldn't take them head-on. He needed a plan. The mind reader smirked, its glowing eyes narrowing. "You are afraid." The alien's voice echoed in Daniel's head. "You know you cannot win." Daniel growled. He hated telepaths. "Surrender, human. It will be painless." Daniel shut his mind down, focusing only on instinct. The rhino alien charged again. This time, Daniel moved toward it instead of away. At the last second, he sidestepped, and the massive creature slammed into the insectoid fighter instead. The insectoid screeched in pain, pinned beneath its ally. The crowd gasped. But Daniel wasn't done. Before the rhino alien could recover, he jumped onto its back, wrapping an arm around its thick throat. The alien thrashed, trying to shake him off. But Daniel held on, squeezing tighter. The creature stumbled, gasped, and then collapsed. The rhino was down. The crowd exploded with noise. But Daniel had no time to celebrate. The telepath attacked. Daniel felt a stabbing pain in his head. His mind was under attack. The alien's eyes glowed brighter. "You cannot resist." Daniel screamed, clutching his skull. He dropped to his knees, the world spinning. "You will die now, human." But humans are not so easy to break. Daniel had been through pain before. He had been beaten, broken, pushed beyond his limits. And every time, he had gotten back up. "You don't know humans very well, do you?" Daniel thought. The alien's smug expression faltered. Daniel pushed back. He focused every ounce of his willpower. every bit of stubborn, human resistance, and shoved the telepath out of his head. The alien staggered back, gasping. Daniel didn't give him a chance to recover. He lunged forward, and with all his strength, punched the telepath right in the face. The alien collapsed, unconscious. Silence. Then the announcer's voice boomed. Impossible. The human wins again. The stadium erupted in chaos. Some cheered. Some screamed in outrage. And in the High Lord's booth, dark figures glared down at Daniel. This human is more dangerous than we thought, one hissed. Then it's time we end this, another whispered. Lady Vashara watched in silence. But for the first time, she smiled. This human was truly something special. The ultimate betrayal. The galactic arena was no longer just a battleground. It had become a war zone of politics, pride, and survival. And Daniel Carter, he was now the center of it all. A human, a mere spectator just days ago, had won 3 impossible battles, each one against warriors stronger, faster, and deadlier than him. The first fight, they called it luck. The second, they called it a fluke. The third, now they were afraid. The High Lords of the tournament, the powerful rulers who controlled the games, sat in their private chamber, their alien faces twisted in frustration. This human is ruining everything, one growled. Another slammed a clawed hand on the table. The people are watching him now. If he keeps winning, he will become a symbol. And symbols, a third lord said coldly, are dangerous. They leaned forward, eyes glowing in the dim light. It is time to break him. Permanently. A taste of betrayal. Back in the fighter's quarters, Daniel sat against the wall, wrapping a cloth around his injured arm. His body ached, his breath was heavy, but his mind was racing. He had survived again. But how much longer could he keep this up? You're making enemies, human, the voice said. Daniel looked up. It was Kara, the half-cybernetic warrior who had warned him before. She leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. Daniel exhaled. Yeah, I figured that out when they threw 3 fighters at me at once. Kara smirked, but her expression quickly darkened. It's worse than you think. The High Lords won't let you win again. Your next fight. It's a trap. Daniel frowned. A trap? What do you mean? She stepped closer. They don't want you to just lose, Daniel. They want to destroy you. Before Daniel could respond, the alarm blared through the chambers. The next match was about to begin, and Daniel had a terrible feeling in his gut. The fight that was never meant to be won. Daniel stepped into the arena, the crowd louder than ever. But something was wrong. There was no opponent waiting for him. Just empty space. The announcer's voice boomed. For the first time in the history of the tournament, we present a métis to the death. The final battle. Smoke and fire filled the air. The once proud galactic tournament arena was in chaos. Daniel Carter had done the impossible. Not only had he survived 3 impossible fights, but he had just shaken the foundation of the entire tournament. The High Lords had rigged his last match, forcing him to fight Kara, a warrior he had come to trust. Instead of playing into their hands, he had turned the crowd against them, using the arena's own destruction as his escape. Now, he was on the run, and the entire galactic empire wanted him dead. The escape through the tunnels. Deep beneath the arena, Daniel and Kara ran through the dark tunnels. The ground shook above them, echoes of battle raging in the stadium as guards tried to regain control. Daniel's lungs burned. His body ached, but he couldn't stop. We have to keep moving, Kara shouted. Daniel gritted his teeth. Where do these tunnels lead? Kara glanced at him. If we're lucky, out of here. If not, a dead end. Great, Daniel muttered. Behind them, alarms blared. The sounds of heavy footsteps echoed. They were being hunted. The hunters arrive. A metallic hiss filled the tunnels. Daniel spun around, just in time to see figures emerging from the shadows. Elite enforcers, the High Lord's personal executioners. These were not normal warriors. Their bodies were enhanced with cybernetics, their glowing red eyes scanning for movement. Cold, efficient, unstoppable. And they were blocking the only exit. Kara cursed. They found us faster than I thought. Daniel's mind raced. They were trapped. They had no weapons, no plan. And then, a voice echoed through the tunnels. Stand down. A figure stepped forward. Lady Vashera. An unexpected offer. Daniel's muscles tensed. She was taller than he expected, draped in a regal cloak, her violet eyes studying him with curiosity. The enforcers immediately stepped aside, obeying her silent command. Daniel exhaled. Let me guess. You're here to kill me personally. Vashera's lips curled into a smirk. If I wanted you dead, human, you wouldn't have made it this far. Kara's fists clenched. What do you want? Vashera tilted her head, gaze locking onto Daniel. To make you an offer. Daniel frowned. An offer? She stepped closer. The High Lords fear you. They see you as a disruption, a mistake, a problem to be eliminated. Her eyes gleamed. I see an opportunity. Daniel didn't respond. He didn't trust her. Vashera continued. The tournament was never about strength. It was about control. The High Lords decide who wins, who lives, who dies. And for the first time in centuries, someone has broken their game. She smiled. You have become more than a fighter, Daniel Carter. You have become a symbol. Daniel narrowed his eyes. And what do you want from me? Vashera's smile faded. To help me end the rule of the High Lords. A dangerous decision. Silence filled the tunnel. Kara glared. And we're supposed to just trust you. Vashera didn't flinch. You don't have to trust me, but you do have to decide. She looked directly at Daniel. You can keep running. You can try to survive on your own, but they will never stop hunting you. You will always be looking over your shoulder. She took a step forward. Or you can fight back. You can take the war to them. Daniel felt the weight of her words. Run. Or fight. He had spent his whole life avoiding conflict. But now, for the first time, he wasn't just fighting for himself. The people in the arena had seen what he did. They had seen the corruption of the High Lords. If he ran now, the story ended. But if he stood his ground, if he pushed forward, he could change everything. Daniel clenched his fists. I don't like being used, Vashera. Her smirk returned. Neither do I. Which is why we make our own rules now. The rebellion begins. Kara looked at Daniel. You really want to do this? Daniel took a deep breath. No, but I don't see another choice. Vashera nodded. Then we start immediately. She turned toward the enforcers. Gather the others. The time for war is now. The enforcers, once loyal to the High Lords, now bowed to her. Daniel frowned. Just like that. You have people inside the system. Vashera smirked. You're not the only one who wants to see the High Lords fall. Daniel exhaled. He was no longer just a fighter in an alien tournament. He had just become a soldier in a war. The High Lords' response. Far above, in the towering palace of the High Lords, alarms blared. A reptilian lord slammed his fist onto a table. This human is more dangerous than we expected. A cybernetic lord growled. He must be eliminated before he spreads his poison. Another lord leaned forward. Then we send our strongest weapon. They turned to the dark chamber beside them. Inside, a warrior unlike any other waited. A legend. A nightmare. A killer with no equal. Awaken him, the High Lords commanded, and bring us the head of Daniel Carter. Cliffhanger. A new enemy arrives. As Daniel, Kara, and Vashera planned their next move, a shadow loomed over the city. Something was coming. Something unstoppable. And for the first time, Daniel might have just met his match. The prize no one expected. The war had begun. Daniel Carter was no longer a spectator in the galactic tournament. He was no longer just a human fighter who had shocked the universe. Now, he was a symbol of rebellion. The High Lords had ruled for centuries, controlling the games, deciding who won and who died. But Daniel had broken their system. And now, they wanted him dead. The rise of the resistance. Deep inside an abandoned sector of the city, Daniel, Kara, and Lady Vashera stood before a growing army. Alien fighters, gladiators, ex-slaves, all those who had suffered under the High Lord's rule, had gathered, drawn by Daniel's defiance. Some had seen him fight in the tournament. Some had bet against him and lost. But now, they stood beside him, because they all knew one thing. If a lone human could defy the High Lords, so could they. Vashera stepped forward, her violet eyes scanning the crowd. "This is no longer just about a tournament," she said. "This is about taking back our freedom." The crowd roared in agreement. Daniel exchanged a glance with Kara. How had this happened? A few days ago, he was just a lost traveler. Now, he was standing in the middle of a revolution. The High Lords strike back. But the High Lords would not fall without a fight. In their massive fortress, they had summoned their deadliest warrior. A fighter so powerful, so terrifying, that no one dared speak his name. He had never lost a battle. He had never surrendered. And now, his mission was simple. Kill Daniel Carter. The assassin arrives. The city streets were silent. Then, boom! A wall exploded as something huge crashed into the rebel hideout. Dust and fire filled the air. Daniel spun around, coughing, his heart pounding. What the hell was that? And then he saw it. A figure stepped through the smoke. 10 feet tall, wrapped in black armor, eyes glowing like fire. The Dark Champion, the executioner of the High Lords. A legend, a nightmare, a monster. Kara's face went pale. That's impossible. He died years ago. The creature's deep, rumbling voice sent shivers through the room. "I do not die," it growled. "I kill." Then, in a blur of motion, it charged. Daniel versus the Dark Champion. Daniel had no time to think. 1 second, he was standing. The next, a fist the size of a boulder slammed into him, sending him flying across the room. Pain exploded through his ribs as he crashed into a metal pillar. He groaned, struggling to stand. The Dark Champion didn't wait. It lunged again, swinging a blade so fast it was a blur. Daniel ducked, barely. The blade sliced through the air, cutting deep into the pillar behind him. Too fast, too strong. This wasn't a normal fight. This was a massacre. Finding a weakness, Daniel took a deep breath, focusing. There had to be a weakness. Every fighter had a pattern. Every warrior had a flaw. He just had to find it. The Dark Champion swung again. Daniel dodged, rolling beneath the strike. He watched. He analyzed. Then, he saw it. A slight hesitation in the right knee. A tiny delay in movement. Daniel smirked. "Got you." Turning the fight. The next time the champion attacked, Daniel didn't dodge. Instead, he moved toward the strike, getting inside the attack range. The champion hesitated for a fraction of a second. That was all Daniel needed. He twisted, slamming a kick into the creature's weakened knee. The Dark Champion staggered. The room fell silent. The impossible had just happened. Daniel had hurt him. The Dark Champion growled. His eyes burned brighter. "You fight well, human," he rumbled. "But it will not save you." Then he activated his second form. The champion unleashed. His armor shifted. Change. Dark energy surged through his body. His wounds healed instantly. Daniel's stomach twisted. "Oh, that's not good." Then, the Dark Champion attacked again. Faster, stronger, unstoppable. Daniel had no chance. The next punch hit him square in the chest. Something cracked. He fell to the ground, gasping for air. The champion loomed over him, raising his blade for the final strike. This was it. This was how it ended. Then, a voice echoed through the room. Enough. Lady Vashera makes her move. Lady Vashera stepped forward, her hands glowing with power. The Dark Champion froze. Daniel coughed, struggling to sit up. Vashera's eyes were locked onto the champion. You are mine now. For the first time, the Dark Champion hesitated. Daniel frowned. What's going on? Kara's voice was barely a whisper. She's overriding his programming. Daniel blinked. Wait, you mean? Yes, Vashera said, her voice like steel. The champion is a weapon, and now he belongs to me. The room fell into stunned silence. The High Lords had just lost their greatest warrior, and Daniel had just gained the most powerful ally in the galaxy. The war has begun. Far above, in the High Lord's fortress, alarm screamed. A reptilian lord slammed his fists on the table. Vashera has betrayed us. Another lord snarled. She has taken the Dark Champion. This war is over if we do not act now. A cybernetic lord's eyes glowed. Then we bring down the entire city. If we cannot rule it, we will burn it to the ground. And so, as Daniel stood in the ruined arena, catching his breath, the sky turned red. Ships descended from above, weapons glowing. The High Lords had given their final command. Destroy everything. Cliffhanger. The final stand. Daniel turned to Vashera. Please tell me you have a plan. She smirked. Yes. Daniel sighed. Why do I feel like I won't like it? Vashera's eyes gleamed. Because it's going to be very, very dangerous. As the sky burned, Daniel clenched his fists. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was war. And he wasn't going to lose. Humanity's rise begins. The sky was on fire. The High Lords had lost control. Their precious tournament was ruined. Their greatest warrior, the Dark Champion, had been taken from them. And now, they had only one option left: total annihilation. Massive warships descended from the clouds, their engines screaming as they hovered over the city. Energy cannons glowed, charging up for destruction. The High Lords had given their final command. Burn it all. Kill them all. End this rebellion before it spreads. The last stand begins. Daniel Carter stood at the center of the battlefield, breathing heavily. He had come to this planet as a spectator. Now, he was leading a war. Kara, his battle-hardened ally, stood beside him, her cybernetic arm humming with energy. Vashera, the exiled princess, stood on the other side, her violet eyes glowing with hidden power. And behind them, an army of gladiators, outcasts, and warriors who had suffered under the High Lord's rule. They had once fought for survival. Now, they fought for freedom. The High Lords unleash hell. The first warship opened fire. A wave of destruction exploded across the city, buildings collapsing under the impact. The rebels scattered, diving for cover. Daniel gritted his teeth. They had to fight back. But how? They had no warships, no grand fleet. But they had something else. They had him. And Daniel Carter never backed down from a fight. The plan that shouldn't work. Vashera, Daniel said. You said the Dark Champion is now under your control. She nodded. Yes. He follows my commands. Daniel exhaled. Then we're going to use him. Kara raised an eyebrow. Use him how exactly? Daniel pointed toward the largest warship in the sky. We're going to board that thing. Silence. Then, Kara groaned. Of course you want to board the enemy flagship. That's completely insane. Daniel grinned. You say that like it's a bad thing. A leap of faith. With no time to argue, the plan was set into motion. The Dark Champion, now following Vashera's orders, launched Daniel, Kara, and Vashera toward the massive warship. It should have been impossible. But in the chaos of battle, no one saw them coming. They crashed through the hull, landing hard inside the command deck. Alarms blared. Guards turned, weapons raised, and Daniel was already moving. The final battle. The High Lord's elite warriors were fast. But Daniel, he was faster. He had learned from every fight in the tournament. He had studied his enemies. Now he used everything. He dodged. He struck. He fought like a man with nothing to lose. Kara fought beside him, her cybernetic limbs tearing through enemies. Vashera unleashed her hidden power, sending waves of energy that crushed the guards like ragdolls. They were unstoppable, face to face with the High Lords. At the heart of the ship, the High Lords waited, the rulers of the galactic tournament, the ones who had rigged every match. Now, their empire was falling apart. And it was all because of one human. Daniel stepped forward, bloody but unbroken. One of the lords snarled, "You should not exist. You are nothing." Daniel wiped the blood from his lip. "Yeah, well, this nothing just wrecked your whole operation." Another lord hissed, "You think this changes anything? Kill one of us, and another will take our place." Daniel smirked. "That's the thing about humans. We don't stop." Then, he fired the ship's main cannon directly at their own fleet. The fall of the High Lords. The explosion ripped through the sky, consuming the warships above. The city below erupted in cheers as the High Lords' fleet collapsed. It was over. The High Lords were finished. The birth of something new. As Daniel stood in the wreckage, watching the sunrise over the battlefield, Vashera stepped beside him. "You've done the impossible," she said. Daniel sighed. "Yeah, but what now?" She smiled. "Now, we rebuild." The tournament was gone. The High Lords were dead. And in their place, something new would rise. Daniel Carter had come to this world as a nobody. Now, he was a legend. The first human warrior to ever change the fate of an entire galaxy. And this was just the beginning.